Welcome to Unscripted with Russo. For our podcast, we decided to explore the people behind the narratives. I'll introduce decision makers and influencers and find out the intimate story behind their rise to success. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Season 5 of Unscripted with Russo. I'm Ashley Russo, and I'm excited to be joined today by Annmarie Supinski, the founder and CEO of Luxe, the most amazing clothing store in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Annmarie, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
A lot of people know you from Luxe, and you outfit a lot of people and women in the Valley, and you give back to the Valley. But I want to learn a little bit more about your origins. So where did you grow up? And tell me a little bit about your family and what was little Annmarie like?
I grew up in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. I am one of 4 children and grew up in a very hardworking blue-collar family. So mom and dad both needed to work. I am the second child and the oldest daughter. So I had an older brother and then 3 younger sisters.
So big family. That's a pretty big family.
It is. It is. And I probably was the most outgoing of my siblings. I believe for me, I was always looking for what would be the next adventure, the next thing to try. So I was a handful, probably. I was a great student, grew up in a very strict family, so I would be, but I was the one child who was always like, well, let's try this, let's try that. Can I do this? Can I do that?
Yeah, kind of the one pushing the envelope. Of course, they say that often that especially successful women, you hear that a lot, that, you're either sort of push the envelope, a little outgoing, maybe a little quote unquote bossy. So I love to hear that actually. What were you into? You said you were your household was strict and you were a good student, but what kinds of other activities did you do? And do you ever look back at those and think, oh, those were building blocks for me?
Yes, absolutely. One of my most favorite things to do when I was younger was I had an aunt who actually worked in a sewing factory, and it was my dad's sister. And I grew up in a Polish family, so all the aunts were called Chuchi, so it was my Chuchi Mary. But I was so inspired by her at a pretty young age in grade school into junior high about what she did and how she made amazing clothing for my sisters and I all the time. When I look back many, many years later, she was amazing about fashion and how she could create these wonderful looks for us. And so growing up, like one of my most favorite Christmas gifts I ever got was her old sewing machine. So she got a new sewing machine and, gave me hers, and I was thrilled. So I did a lot of that. I was into sports in regards to, like, I did hockey. My true passion from a sport perspective was swimming. So I, started to do that and loved that and did that all through high school into college. But, again, I think it was about always that diversity of things that I was looking to get involved with. I played the flute. I was in the chorus. So, I think I was then just trying to really experience life in my little town the way I could.
Yeah, and you sound like you would get involved in things. You were not afraid to try and kind of get involved. I love the sewing thing. I feel like it's such a lost art. My great-grandparents were actually tailors from Italy, and the same kind who made clothing. All of my mother's clothing was made by them. And I can really sew a button. So I'm very sad by the fact that did not translate. I cannot speak Italian and I cannot sew very well. So it's kind of cool that you had that. And then, of course, you go on into fashion in such a meaningful way. Do you feel like those early lessons that you learned from your aunt were really important in understanding kind of the craftsmanship and maybe the thought that goes into fabrics and design of clothing? I mean, even if you didn't realize it, do you look back and think, what was the connector there?
I think just she was a very big influence growing up for me. And I have a teaching and psychology degree. That's what I went to college for. So I think it's come back later in life for me to say, oh, yes, is this part of me being developed at an early age and having this passion? But there was no direct path. It all happened more by accident, a wonderful accident. But, I do what I do more, I think, out of the journey, the unknown journey, but not that I was very deliberate. I wish I were that deliberate and strategic about getting where I am.
It's interesting you mentioned that, though. It's funny to look back and think about like different puzzle pieces and how they came together. Did you have a first job? Did you have a job in high school or college that you recollect as like a really, whatever, a first job?
Yes. So as I said, grew up, in a family of 6. I really needed to work because I wanted things. And, my parents were like, well, if you want these things, we, really, there wasn't a lot of extra funds for things. So my first job, which is what I've always attributed more of how I ended up doing what I do today, is that it was at Dairy Queen. And
I love Dairy Queen. Dairy Queen was always like a big special outing in our family. Like if you got to go to Dairy Queen, something special had happened in your life. So I love that.
So that was the first official job, and it was very interesting. It was my elementary school principal owned it. And so knew my parents. And so I did that and did that all through high school into college. But what was interesting is, if you know anything about Dairy Queen, the worst thing that happens is when you have to wear a very ugly uniform. And then secondly, at the end of the night, you're pretty sticky and just, you can't wait to get all that clothing off with, how messy ice cream sundaes can be if you're really busy and moving around. So when I left that job and then took a part-time job in retail, I always say, I think that was my passion about, oh my gosh, I want to look good. I want to feel good. I don't want to ever have to wear a uniform again.
Yeah, it's funny, often and I'm sure you've had the same experience when you talk to young people or you talk to students, interns, et cetera, I say to them often, like, just take a step forward, because sometimes knowing what you don't want to do can be just as influential in figuring out what you want to do. And sometimes what you think you want to do doesn't end up being the case anyway. So I love the fact that the ugly uniform and the sticky, messy circumstances made you say, I'm going to get a different type of job in retail. That's great. What about in your family? I mean, being the oldest daughter and the second oldest in the family, did you share responsibility with household things and your younger siblings? Kind of what was your role in the family structure?
Always involved in helping out at home, for sure. And having 2 younger sisters was fun in regards to, it was challenging at times because I was the child who was always out there wanting to do new and different things. But it was great having, most importantly, my sister that's close to me in age. We're about 18 months apart. We were very close. And so it was me being out there and taking the initiative, and many times being the one who got in trouble for because I was the oldest sister and should have taken care of my younger sisters to make sure they didn't do terrible things. But it was fun, but yes, at times challenging being the oldest daughter, and I was supposed to be the responsible older sister.
I'm the oldest sibling in my household, so this resonates with me, certainly the responsibility of being the oldest. But we're going to take a quick break, Annmarie, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about your higher education degree, what made you go into education, and then ultimately sort of the pivot you made to go really into fashion and merchandising. So everybody stick with us. This is Unscripted with Russo. We'll be right back.
As a mother of 2, I know it can be tough to find activities that everyone will enjoy. Luckily, the Lehigh Valley has so many ways to treat your family without breaking the bank. You can experience cool discoveries at the Da Vinci Science Center or all aboard the WKNS railroad train for an afternoon adventure. There's fun around every corner of the Lehigh Valley, and you can uncover it all on Discover Lehigh Valley's website. Visit discoverlehighvalley.com for more information.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. I'm here with my friend Annmarie Supinski of Luxe, and she was telling us a little bit about growing up in Wilkes-Barre and the big family she was a part of, first jobs, and a definite joiner, which does not surprise me because you are a joiner in our community for sure. You ended up going to college, not too far from home. Was that a norm in your family, or was that something new? Were you one of the first to go to college?
Actually, my older brother was the first to go to college. It was the norm was to be able to be close to home. There wasn't really that luxury of going away then. And the college I went to was a really great, now it's called Luxe University, but it was a, local college, but really well known. I am the first child to graduate college. So I had a huge responsibility around it. And the opportunity to be local allowed me to live at home and save on expenses. And then secondly, to continue to work part-time while I was home.
Why did you want to go to college? Like, what was the drive there? And was that something sort of important to your parents? Was it important to you? Was it mutual?
I would say it was mutual, but I had a huge passion throughout my entire life, whether it is a teacher or a mentor. I just was so passionate about the effect teachers had on me. And it was a fourth grade teacher, Miss Facile, that I will always remember, who was this young woman. She she was younger in the profession and just had a huge impact on me in the way she taught, the way she inspired and motivated me and other students. And so at a very young age, it was like, I'm going to be a teacher. That's what I want to do. That's how I want to make a difference. And so, my parents supported that. And, going to college locally was the way to do that.
I love to hear the impact of teachers on people's lives. I certainly have that same feeling really through different times, but almost my whole education, and thinking back to teachers that were so influential. It's such an incredible role that teachers play in our lives. So you study early childhood education and psychology. Do you ever actually go into teaching?
I was student teaching and working a full-time retail job. So I moved from the Dairy Queen into a part-time sales associate job, happened to be in women's fashion, and continued to do that to the point senior year of college. I was a full-time assistant manager and I was student teaching full-time.
Wow, that's like intense. That's a lot of hours going on doing that.
It is.
How are you managing your time, Annmarie? Because when I think about, for people listening who maybe are in the early part of their career or any time in their life, and they're worrying about time management, when you say something like that, what were you doing? Was there something conscious you were doing, or that you look back on and think, gosh, at 22 years old, I was managing full-time teaching and full-time job. How were you doing it?
Throughout my entire career, people have asked this about work. It was my mom's work ethic. My mom was incredible. I didn't know anything else. If you look back and say, I'm proud of that, but it's also been an opportunity to work on better balance in my life as I've gotten older. So I'm used to do what it takes to get the job done. I happen to be doing at that point two things that I was very passionate about, and I think that's essential. But it was to do the responsible thing. So that was more of what I think was a driving factor in the beginning of my career, and getting through college. But, it's just, I don't know anything else. My mom was an amazing role model that had 4 children, at times was working 2 jobs, and so it's in my genes to
yeah, you didn't think, oh, I'm going to just take the shortcut here. It just wasn't in your DNA.
Wasn't an option, right?
What was, when you came to that crossroads of teaching or, working sort of in fashion and, in a store, what made that decision for you, and what went into it?
It was, at the time, it was the early 80s, and trying to get a teaching job at that point was very challenging. It was the profession, at least in the area I was still locally, that in order to really get a job, you were, financially supporting school districts and some other things. So there were very little opportunities. And so with that, I was working full-time. As I said, I was really good at being a manager. And what I quickly realized was my success came from my ability to teach, train, motivate, and inspire. So the things I learned in college from an education perspective and psychology were the things that at a pretty young age were helping me to be successful in the retail industry.
That's such an interesting connection, because I think often people look at the title of a degree or the title of a job and think it has to fit into a particular box. And it's amazing to me how often skill sets translate regardless of the job you have or the company you're in or the industry you're even in, because that teaching and mentoring exists in every single field. What parts of the retail industry outside of the teaching and mentoring that really resonated with you? Like, what were early, I think, lessons or skills that you were able to develop that you've seen really come to fruition today to help you transition into being an entrepreneur?
The ability to really manage operations in a business. Often, and still today, young women will say, oh my gosh, like, I want to do what you do. And a lot of times it's about, I have to go to the Fashion Institute. And that's a great thing to do. If given the opportunity, I never would have passed it up. But it was more about getting in and understanding and learning how to grow a business and how to manage a business. And so, often in my career, I was recruited into positions, and I was very fortunate to have a lot of positions, but it was based on results that I was able to drive in businesses. So the ability to manage payroll and the ability to, be a great merchant, the ability to, hire, train, develop teams to be successful. Like, it was really about a ground up, from the ground up, learning different parts of the business and then saying, okay, what trigger can I pull with people involved to be able to drive success?
Looking at those pieces that go into running a business, now that you've been running a successful business for, I think you're going on 7 years now, at AM Luxe in Bethlehem, all those puzzle pieces really are critical. And I think sometimes people see the forward-facing part, like it's a beautiful store with beautiful items in it, but it's incredible what goes on behind the scenes to make a business successful. And you learned those pieces throughout your career. Tell me about that transition. You spent, I believe, over 30 years in the retail industry, and you worked for places that everybody would know, like, Gap and Best Buy and Liz Claiborne and Walmart. And that all of those things must have been incredible experiences. What was that moment for you, and what did you do to prepare for it?
I continued to grow in my career. And at one point, I remember it, a mentor of mine saying, it is like a best thing you can do. It's like a wheel. And so the spokes of the wheel were how I continued to grow. And I appreciate you saying, the businesses I worked for were very different. Some were in apparel, some were not. And so with that, after 38 years of doing this, and being really happy doing it, traveling across the United States and spending time with, very diverse communities, a mentor said to me, okay, what are you going to do next? And said, what's your passion? Like, where else do you go in a corporate situation? I had always had a dream of opening my own business, but in all honesty, I was terrified and thought, oh my gosh, do I have the funds to do this? And how do you do this? And I felt very confident in, actually, my first endeavor was thinking about buying a company. And so the location I'm in, there was a business. And I said, maybe I'll buy it, because in my career, I was constantly recruited and I found passion in going in and fixing things. So I was all fixed this struggling business that was existing in the spot where I was. And then again, through a lot of guidance, it was like, why are you just not starting your own company? And it was out of fear. So finally, with family and friends and everyone's like, just do it. You've got this. We support you. I opened AM Luxe, and it was interesting because within 90 days of making that decision, I opened, which was crazy. So,
that's a really short period of time. And I want to dive a little deeper into, once you opened, what the successes and what the challenges have been along the way. But I love that you used that fear and you channeled it to drive you forward to try something that was the unknown. So it's really an exciting story of taking years of experience, fear, but excitement and drive, and turning it into something amazing. So stick with us. You're listening to Unscripted with Russo. We'll be right back with Annmarie Supinski.
Home to the Iron Pigs in Dorney Park, Allentown is a city without limits. Food, art, dance, you name it, it's got it. Allentown's historic roots are matched with its vibrant culture to create an adventure that you'll never forget. Thinking of taking a trip? Follow Lehigh Valley, PA on Instagram, and you'll find attractions, hotels, and sites you won't want to miss.
Welcome back to Unscripted with Russo. If you are just joining us, you have missed a little bit of an amazing conversation with Annmarie Supinski, but we've got more that we're going to talk about. She's the owner of Luxe in Bethlehem, an amazing shop for women. And if you have not been there, it is an absolutely beautiful store, fantastic products, and she gives back to the community like crazy. So Annmarie, before the break, we talked about the fear that you had in opening a business and how you use that to propel you to do it. Once you open, tell me a little bit about the challenges in the early days, both for you personally, being an entrepreneur for the first time, as well as the business itself. What were some of the challenges and what were some of the triumphs?
Although my career was vast and I had spent time across the United States for many companies, I had never been a buyer. So I was always operations and I was always with people, but I had never purchased product for any organization. So what I did was I was like, okay, what do I do? And a really good friend of mine said to me, you know what? Buy what you love, buy what we would come to your house. And it was always a joke. People would come in and we'd always be hanging out in my closet, looking at clothing and things as when friends.
That's something we have in common. I do so many swaps with friends. I've got 3 or 4 friends that were like around the same size, different body shapes, but like we trade clothes, or here's a pile, go through it, take what you want for 6 months.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's what a friend said. She said, why don't you just buy what you love? And which was really great is my passion around opening a shop in Bethlehem was that when I went to look for things as a sophisticated older woman, I was often challenged to find unique, different items that I could wear in the Valley. And so I'd go to King of Prussia, I'd go to New York, I'd go to Short Hills, but I couldn't find it here. So those are the filters I used. I'm going to find things that women over 50 can look good, feel good in. And I then just said, okay, what do I like? And so that was the good part. Some of the challenges obviously were I opened a shop within 90 days, I put a sign up and no one knew who I was. And so it was about getting into the community, one client at a time and making a difference. And so I think that was a big challenge. A lot of the successes were what you mentioned earlier. I knew the number one reason many small businesses go out of business is because of their payroll. So I worked myself. I had one person who worked 5 hours a week.
I understand that 100%. People would say all the time, well, why do you do this or why do you do that? I'm like, because I own the business. I don't have to pay myself. I can get the job done until I have enough to make payroll. Exactly. So yeah, we had a really lean staff, the first 5 years of ASR, the 3 or 4 of us did everything. So I get it. I always thought that was admirable too. And I think it's nice because you've built an incredible rapport with your clients. Like you really know everybody. Another woman who has a very successful business locally, the Susan Bella, with Susan Bella, just same kind of thing. She worked the business and got to know her clients. And I like to think I've tried to do that as well. And it provides you a nice opportunity. But you mentioned community. You do a lot in our community. You're part of downtown Bethlehem. You do stuff with the Women's Business Council of the Chamber, just to name a few. You give back a lot. You've got these cool give back days where you give a portion of the proceeds, just like a restaurant would. And you do it really consistently, Annmarie. So where does that heart for the community come in? And why is that like an important philosophy or part of your business model?
I transitioned from having national responsibilities and moved into a community. Again, as we talk about the journey, and this has been so different because my career was always on a plane, on a train, on an automobile, 3-4 days a week, and I loved it. But when I transitioned to my own business, it gave me the first time in my life after moving away from home to actually build relationships in a community, because I was always on the road traveling somewhere. And, one of the things my husband and I would joke about was that I could take you on any highway and I could take you any mall in the United States. And my husband knew all the local roads and I didn't know anything like locally because I was never local. So that was important. And it is interesting because sometimes I'm in a room, as you mentioned, like the Board of Governors, and there are many corporations and large businesses there. So as a small business owner, making a difference looks and feels different. So I may not be able to give the quantity of giving back dollars that other businesses, but I can do it with quality and I can do what I can do. And so the bottom line was, it was very important to give back to the community that would support my business and that were where my associates would work. And so from the beginning, I started this. And honestly, it was scary because I didn't know if I was going to have any income.
Look, I don't even know if I have those margins to give back, right? But
right.
Yeah, I love the idea though of using what your strength as a small business is, because I have that same feeling that you just talked about, where we do have a lot of really big corporations who are very community minded and are very generous. And it's kind of impossible for us to compete with that, but I'm not sure we're meant to. And so similarly, the idea of figuring out what does your business do that is an asset to the community and how can you use that? You've just done that so beautifully. It's just so obvious. So since we're talking about the community, tell me a little bit about what it is you love about the Lehigh Valley and why, you and your husband have decided to make this your home.
This is such a community that wants small business to be successful, and they want to support the success of business owners. And I have never in all my exposures been so supported by a community. This community, especially downtown Bethlehem, would love nothing better than they don't ever want to go to a mall if they don't have to. And so there is that support of my business, of me, of the giving back. And so it's been totally relationship driven. And my whole being is about a relationship. So I've been very, very fortunate that, I say now I have clients that now are some of my best friends, support me, and we support each other through the good, bad, and ugly.
It's also really fun to see, the women, especially different women leaders in our community who are your clients and go to different events or travel on their vacations. And I know we both get to see them on Facebook or Instagram, and it's fun to see that. And I have to say, I get a sense of local pride when I see someone tag AM Luxe saying, I was wearing this, on vacation in California, and I can't imagine what that makes you feel like. So it's pretty exciting. When you go out and about in the Lehigh Valley, are there some favorite things you love to do? Are there any activities or places you love to go, restaurants you love to eat at?
I do spend a good amount of time in downtown Bethlehem. I love spending time with friends. And again, these are clients that we will go, I love the Shelby because I love the Shelby for brunch. And so I have different places that I love to go to, depending on the group that we're with and the exposures that we're looking for. And, one of my most favorite things is just to have dinner and drinks and just really spend time with friends and family. So I like to move through the valley. I find myself often going to what I call home, which is Bethlehem.
Yeah, it's amazing how many excellent places there are to go and to try. And I do the same thing and say, let's try something, place somebody told me about, or something new, or somewhere I haven't been yet. So I love that about the Lehigh Valley. Well, I want to ask you two more questions before I let you go. The first is, Bethlehem is such a destination for people, certainly with Historic Bethlehem, Music Fest. There are so many reasons people come to Bethlehem. Do you get out of town customers? Do people just happen to stop in? And if so, what's sort of the feedback that you get from them? I've always wanted to ask you that.
Great question. I do get a lot of people from out of town, and the clients who come every year to Music Fest and come to visit me, now it's part of the Music Fest routine. I have a good amount of clients who will come from Doylestown, Stroudsburg. So say within a 45-minute radius, who I have 4 women who come every quarter to see me from Doylestown, and they make Apollo their lunch destination, and they go down to Hotel Bethlehem for a drink, and they spend hours with me in the store. And so there's a lot.
That is so cool, Annmarie. I had a feeling you were going to tell me something like that, but I'm glad I asked. And I love that that's the answer, because you and AM Luxe have truly become a destination within a destination. And that's a huge sign of success. So congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Before I let you go, we'd like to ask you some rapid fire questions. I just want to confirm for our audience that you have not heard these questions.
I have not.
All right. So I'm going to ask and you're going to answer. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Your favorite hobby or secret talent?
Well, I have no secret talent. So I would say hobby. I don't think enough is a hobby. One of my most favorite things to do on a Friday night is, I think, as most people know, I don't have children, but I have a large amount of young girls to young women that I spend Friday night. So my Friday night going home is calling and connecting and checking in on all of them and just kind of finding out what they're doing and how things are. And I often think I get more out of it than they do.
What actress would you cast to play you in a movie about your life?
Ooh. Diane Lane.
Great one. All right. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Believe in yourself and see in yourself what others see in you.
Perfect. If you didn't have the job you have now, what would you be doing instead? Something totally different you have never done before.
You know, I think I would be doing what I'm doing now just because what I did prior to opening AM Luxe, my dream was always to do this. So I am incredibly fortunate to be able to do this.
You're already living the dream.
I am living it.
Name one person who inspires you.
I have a mentor that I've known for over 20 years that has been a huge influence in mentoring me and influencing me personally and professionally, whose name is Dawn. And it's about putting me in uncomfortable situations at times, but always having my back if I wasn't successful, and has given me just unlimited support. And I do what I do because I see what's possible through a mentor.
Wonderful. Annmarie Supinski, thank you so much for being my guest on Unscripted with Russo. Congratulations on all your success with AM Luxe. If you're listening out there, follow them, like them, and get into the store because it's pretty amazing and you will love it. And you'll know that part of your proceeds usually are going back to the community in some way as well. So Annmarie, thanks for being with me.
Thank you.
All right, until next time.
Liked what you saw? Subscribe to our channel so you never miss another video.
To see more of The Peak TV, check out our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and catch us on WFMZ Channel 69.